Tales of Veldrith, written and produced by Matty Taylor. Episode 6, The Sentinel, Chapter 3, The Hidden Map. The morning sun cast a muted glow over Jorvik, struggling to penetrate the thick clouds that hung low over the city. Vestinus, Kaya, and her sister Alva sat in the apothecary's back room. The faint scent of herbs mingled with the metallic tang of blood that lingered on Vestinus's cloak. Alva, shaken but unharmed, held a cup of warm tea in trembling hands as Kaya sat protectively beside her. Vestinus stood at his work table, studying the ritual dagger he had retrieved from the scene. The blade was etched with runes that pulsed faintly, their meaning just out of reach. Despite his centuries of study, some ancient symbols still eluded him.
They wanted to kill her,
Kaya said, breaking the heavy silence.
Why? What are they doing?
Vestinus didn't answer immediately. He placed the dagger on the table and turned to face them.
The ritual they were performing wasn't just about her. It's part of something larger, something designed to awaken a power tied to death itself.
Kaya's brow furrowed.
You mean this Arawn they were talking about?
Yes,
Vestinus said.
Arawn is an ancient being, one tied to death and the passage of souls. The Heralds of Arawn believe they can summon an avatar of his power to this world. If they succeed...
He trailed off, his expression grim. Kaya shuddered.
But why my sister?
Vestinus gestured toward Alva, who looked up from her cup, her face pale.
Because of her connection to the ley lines beneath Jorvik. You said your family has lived here for generations.
Alva nodded hesitantly.
Yes, our grandmother always said our ancestors were tied to the land. She called it a gift, but I never really understood.
It's no coincidence,
Vestinus said.
The cult is targeting people with deep ties to the ley lines, people whose lifeblood resonates with the magic of the earth. They're trying to use that resonance to fuel their rituals.
Kaya's eyes narrowed.
So they'll come after more people like her?
Exactly,
Vestinus said.
And we need to find out where they'll strike next.
Later that day, Vestinus returned to the warehouse at the docks, Kaya trailing close behind despite his protests. The building was still and silent, but the air inside felt heavy, as if the remnants of the ritual lingered. The robed bodies of the cultists Vestinus had killed were gone, but faint bloodstains and scattered ritual tools remained. Vestinus knelt near the spot where the ritual circle had been, examining the ground carefully. The faint outline of the symbols still glowed, visible only to those trained in the arcane arts. He traced them with his clawed fingers, muttering under his breath.
These runes,
he said.
They're coordinates.
Coordinates?
Kaya echoed. She crouched beside him, her brows furrowing.
You mean like a map?
Not a physical map,
Vestinus replied.
These runes are tied to the ley lines. They mark places of power, the sites the cult needs for their rituals.
He followed the trail of runes across the floor, stopping near a broken crate. Tucked beneath the debris was a rolled-up piece of parchment, stained and crumpled. Vestinus carefully unrolled it, revealing a map of Jorvik and the surrounding areas. Several locations were marked with the same spiral symbol he had seen on the body of the merchant.
This is it,
Vestinus said, his voice grim.
their plan.
Kaya peered over his shoulder.
What are those marks? The next ritual sites?
Vestinus nodded.
Each of these locations corresponds to a point where the ley lines intersect. They'll need to perform rituals at all of them to complete their summoning.
He traced his finger across the map, stopping at one of the marks near the city's edge.
This one is next. It's close, and they'll need to move quickly to keep their momentum.
Kaya frowned.
It's an old temple, isn't it? People say it's haunted.
Haunted or not, the cult will be there.
Vestinus said, rolling the map up and slipping it into his cloak.
We have no time to waste.
As night fell, Vestinus and Kaya approached the old temple. The structure was overgrown with vines and half collapsed, its once proud stone walls now crumbling into ruin. The faint sound of chanting reached them as they drew closer. The same guttural tones Vestinus had heard at the warehouse. Vestinus turned to Kaya, his expression stern.
Stay here. This time, I mean it.
Kaya opened her mouth to argue but stopped when she saw the seriousness in his eyes. Reluctantly, she nodded and crouched behind a cluster of rocks. Vestinus braced himself. The fight had only just begun. Tales of Veldrith is brought to you by Metal and Magic, purveyors of Celtic and Viking-inspired casual jewellery. Visit metalandmagic.com. That's Metal and Magic with a CK.com.